Welcome back to Survivor Indianapolis, Season 5 of Ant Island, Episode 11 recap. President Trump is back in the Oval Office, going from president to out to president. He was here, he was gone, he's back, and just like he was here, and he was gone, and he was back. We were here last week, and then we were gone, but now we're back. Ready to talk about Episode 11. So, don't actually edit any of that stuff out, I'm just being stupid. Episode 11. What'd you think?
Okay, yeah. When you were giving me some different scenarios here to go through, this was a pretty straightforward episode, right?
Very straightforward episode.
And the writing was on the wall, just like last week, Cameron was out of the vote, and once again this week, Cameron is out of the vote, and Cameron is out of the game.
Yeah.
The Best Class Alliance is a real thing, and they are going to the Final Four.
They made it, yeah, all the way.
Moretta steals Cameron's vote at Tribal Council. He can't even vote.
The wound.
Just like, all right, I'm already going home, but here, let me put my vote on you so you can't even vote now.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And then Leah plays her idol, obviously. So
yeah,
Chris wins immunity. It's like, who are we going to vote for here? Adrian or Cameron? And it's just like, okay, at this point, too many people in the corner of Adrian. Cameron didn't really stand a chance, but the only chance he had was in this challenge. And this challenge is a very fun challenge. It's very, it's not physical at all. It's all about the mind. And as you guys heard me kind of give you a detailed description there in the voiceover, it's pretty like simple, but like when you're trying to explain it in a voiceover, it's hard to just listen and be like, okay, that makes sense. You have to have that visual along with it. So basically, David, like you cannot stack a bigger square on top of another square. And you have to move your entire stack from one peg to one of the other two, right? And put them in order. Yeah. So it's a very, challenging thing for the mind. But once again, Chris was just working and working and working, and he never stopped. As I was watching him do
a video with him the whole time.
I mean, the whole time, didn't even have to think about it. It was just kind of like, okay. Like he got the concept really quick. And it's cool to see that Chris, once again, this guy that's been dominating this whole game, is not just doing it in the physical side of things, but also in the challenges that are like more mental. And he's got the strategy and social game down. Like Chris, how is he not going to win this game?
So we'll have to see what happens next week. But for this week, I think it's the kind of challenge where, as you saw with Chris, and he talks about it, he verbalizes this in the confessional. I think it's one of the first confessionals after the challenge. He said, as David's talking, I was visualizing in my head what I had to do. Move this one here, move that one there. And once you kind of crack the sequence of like the general idea, and there are times where, like he said, like times where I hiccuped or like stuttered. I think he said stuttered, but I was able to get it back on track. You can see the other players making progress and then pausing and being like, okay, now what do I do? When really it isn't the kind of a puzzle where you go through one phase and then solve that and go to the next phase. It's just a process and a pattern that you repeat over and over until you've solved it. And it is like weird to explain and difficult to explain and could be confusing to understand. But once you do kind of click it just kind of goes. And that's what you saw with Chris immediately. So a pretty straightforward challenge. I would love for this challenge to be more interesting, but like at this point in the game, you have 2 challenges left. We're trying to speed things up, trying to give people a balance of more physical challenges and more mental challenges. So the last one was more physical than mental. This one's all mental. And we also always try to do the faster challenges, like the longer challenges in the first half and then the faster challenges later on, so that the people that are voted off I feel like they get their time in still, and that they aren't sitting around waiting for like stuff to happen. It's like, okay, a challenge is, it happens. It's like, that was like a 5-minute challenge. If you count me explaining it, it was probably more like 10 to 15, but like the actual challenge is so quick. And we move on to strategy, and then we go on tribal council, and we just keep moving. And so if the people that are out of the game, it's not like just dragging. And I do think that I have been talking a little bit on these episodes a couple different times about giving them more time to strategize, but I do think it's fine to have quick challenges like this, even at important moments, because the challenges aren't everything. If Chris wins like 4 or 5 and however many it's been in a row and wins the game off of just the challenges, then maybe I have to rethink that. But just generally speaking, we don't see, in my experience, and even in Real Survivor, you don't see someone just run up, do a run of just like all these challenges and then win to the end. So a lot of times it is more nuanced than that, and the challenges are a part of the game, but they are not like the game.
Yeah.
But this challenge was pretty quick and short, so
Yeah, it really was. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say about it. I think Adrian was probably the second
she was
closest.
close. Yeah, but not close enough to be like, oh, it was
Yeah.
so close.
Let me
But
just throw out a hypothetical for you just to kind of get your thoughts on this because
yeah,
let's just say for some reason Chris had messed up, Adrian wins
hmm
immunity.
yeah,
Do you think there's a world where the girls from Best Class Alliance come together and say, let's take Cameron to the Final Four and let's get rid of Chris?
no, I really don't,
No, I
which
don't either.
is crazy because they should.
Yeah.
But I don't. And part of it is hear this in confessionals, and you see it in the strategy time. When this is the episode, you see uh Moretta go to Chris and say, "I had," and you hear her say, I think in the confessional too, she hasn't told anybody about the steal a vote. And who's the only person she tells? Chris.
Chris.
So you think she's gonna use it against Chris? Like, now I don't think that Leah would play her idol for Chris. I think that she would be like, no, I'm looking out for myself. But I don't think that she would use it in a way to vote Chris out either. Although he was very worried about that. He even tells her about it, but then you can hear it. I'm not sure how well you can hear it. The audio is really tough to hear in that spot. But she basically tells Moretta, I think it's Moretta, maybe it's Adrian actually. Now that I think about it, I can't remember now. Um, so Oh, I need to figure that out. But whatever. One of the two of them, she says, I'm pretty sure it's Moretta, but she says, Chris keeps talking, keeps like being worried that we're gonna vote him out, and she's like, maybe we just should, and they just like laughs about it though, and like I left it in the episode because to me it's like you could take that as like, well, maybe they're thinking about it, but like I think the intention of that was really just like a joke. Like you like, oh Chris, he's worried about us turning on him, but that's not gonna happen, you know. Uh, and you see it when you like how would they have turned against Chris when like Adrian and Cameron realize in this episode it's probably one of the two of them.
Mm.
It has to be one of the two of them, pretty much. And even though Moretta was not immune, they were with it enough to realize that like Moretta's connected to too many people at this point. Like Chris is not going to vote Moretta out. Chris had for all the times that Chris had thrown someone's name out as a decoy vote, he threw Leah's name out and hadn't thrown Moretta's name out, right?
Yeah.
And like I don't think Cameron would have worked to vote. And if you go to Cameron and say, "Hey, you have to vote out Moretta, or it's going to be you," then maybe he does. But like it just seems like Moretta's too connected. Uh, and so it's like Adrian and Cameron realize it's one of us, and they still can't like manage to find a plan because it's just too little, too late, and they have no experience working together. You can tell they're just like kind of being a little cagey, and they don't want the other one to like take that information and go use it against them. It's like they're not fully trusting that like we or both should be interested in working together because we're both on the bottom here, but they won't go there. So it's like just it's just too little, too late. There's just too few options.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's really smart to kind of like even if you have your alliances, talk to everybody because
Yeah,
and
for
when there's
sure.
not enough time, I've been a victim of that myself. You know, we've talked about it before, but like when it was my first time playing and the only time I've really even been introduced to Survivor, you know, I was like for sure, oh yeah, there's an alliance of three. I was in the final five, and somebody from their alliance of three won immunity. And it was the person that wasn't the biggest threat. It was Jacob. It wasn't
hmm
Chris. And Michael was a part of that group. And me and Caleb were in our own alliance. And they had been voting. They've been trying to get Caleb out. He had won like 4 immunity challenges, and I was like, okay, they're gonna get Caleb out. They're gonna vote for him. So I'm just gonna vote for him too. Like whatever. What's the point of voting for somebody else on their tribe? Even though Chris does not have immunity, like they're not gonna vote whatever. So I'll just vote with him. That's kind of how I viewed it. And there was no communication there. And then Michael flipped and voted for Chris. And had I voted for Chris with Caleb and Michael flips, then Chris goes out of the game. It's a massive blindside, and then there's a chance that I could even potentially win the game at this point. Whatever. I'm
Well,
just saying, like it totally like
like the
changed.
context of it is that Chris won the game that year.
Yes, that's true. Wins the game, right? And there could have been multiple times where Chris gets voted out. When I played my idol when I first got back in the game, I could have voted Chris out, but Caleb was trying to make an alliance with me there, so kind of like had to eat my had to eat my vote there basically, and just like make it whatever. But I'm just saying, like that's where communication's big, and from having the experience now, looking back, like man, had I just had any kind of relationship to talk to Michael before in the game, they were
hmm
just so tight knit and like they wouldn't talk to anybody outside of their alliance. But that's what helped Chris win the game. So
Yes.
he was very controlling in that demand and or not demand, but he was controlling in that way. So I just feel like with this one, pretty straightforward. And to me, it's just like Moretta is so funny. Just listening back to what she said in previous episodes, like she was calling Chris as, I know how Chris is going to be. Chris is somebody you can't trust. You got to get Chris out. Like I'm definitely voting him out. And here she is, like maybe his number one ally. And it's so funny to me because she acted like she wanted nothing to do with working with Chris, like understood the value of having him on your side, but also knew the value or I guess you say the disadvantage of knowing how he plays and how
Hmm.
he is as a person and competitor. So she
Yeah.
knows all this, yet she's still continuing to work with him. And it might put her in a bad spot if she takes him to the final three.
Yeah. It seems like Chris has been saying in confessional for a couple episodes. I think he started saying it either 1 or 2 episodes ago, where he's basically trying to play. He says, "I'm trying to play the game in a way that if I get to the end, people are going to say, 'Wow, he played a good game,'" which basically is like a Survivor newbie way of saying, "I want to play a game that I know if I get to the end, I'm getting the votes and I'm going to win." And I'm not gonna just like hope and pray that like people like me enough to vote for me or something. I'm gonna play a game that I will earn the votes. I even have to worry about it. And I think that's pretty clearly true. It would depend on his ability to pitch himself to the jury, and if they were bitter at him, like is Sonya bitter at him for betraying her? That kind of thing could come into play with a few different people. However, he was voted off, so he can always say, "Well, y'all voted me off first," you know. Like so, there's potential ways that he could get out of some of that stuff. But the point is, the players are acting as if he's not a threat, or maybe if like they would have maybe voted him off one of these couple rounds, but no one in confessional is saying. This is why you asked this question a few minutes ago, and I said no, I don't think so because it isn't like anyone's saying in confessional, man, Chris won. Like, we got to get him out. I can't believe Chris won again. Like, no one's saying that. They're like, yeah, Chris won, so that's what we're gonna do. It was like just a matter of fact. Like, this is, whatever. As if Chris winning is like a side note in the strategy.
Yeah,
When like, if you're really aware of the day in the game, then your awareness should lead to a understanding that Chris is going to win if he's at the end, and therefore I should be frustrated that he's winning challenges and I can't vote him off, right? Like
right,
no one's voicing that, so that makes me think they're not aware that he would win, or they're maybe some people are not. And I don't actually know this for a fact, so I'm just speculating. Maybe some people were not like super worried about winning or losing. Like they're just like, well, you know what? I want our alliance to get to the end, best class alliance. That's a cool story. It's fun to just to get to the final four, and then whatever happens, happens. And you see that in the real game where people aren't like always super worried about winning. Um, Chris is interested in winning though. If he gets to the end, he's winning.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I guess we can kind of look forward to the next episode. We got the best class alliance in the final four now
Yeah,
that Cameron's voted out, and one of them is going to have to turn on one. They're going to turn on one another. I would say, based on history, what we've seen so far, Chris is going to win immunity. Like that would be if I were a betting person, I would bet Chris as the favorite to win immunity.
he's definitely the favorite.
So now it's between Leah, Moretta, and Adrian. And who do I think is the biggest threat to win the game at the end? Based on what we've seen so far, Moretta hasn't had her name written down once.
Yeah,
So can she use that as an advantage, saying like nobody even, wrote my name down once. I had such a great social game. I was in all these different alliances. Or Adrian could say, I've got the returning player challenge story. Like I got voted out only because I got stupid blindsided by an idol that Drew had. I've been
yeah,
in great alliances with everybody, and I've, been on the majority side of the vote at the right time. Or Lee can say, I've kind of manipulated the game. So it's like,
yeah.
how are they going to turn and how are they going to try to utilize Chris if he wins immunity to like pull them to be like, hey, vote this way, vote that way. So I think this is really going to be interesting to kind of see them turn on each other. Finally, we're going to see some cutthroat play potentially here because
Mhm.
now, for the first time ever, you're really seeing an alliance turn on one another.
Yeah, and there are some options too. I mean, Chris has been worried about Leah turning on him off and on for episodes now. That could just finally happen if he doesn't win immunity. Or she could stay loyal to her husband and they can work together. And maybe she thinks that she can use something against him somehow, or maybe she thinks the jury will be bitter at him, like I mentioned earlier. Because Leah was playing the Chris kind of game before Chris came back into the game, right? She was puppet mastering every vote at Siakam, and then at the swap tribe, she was in the driver's seat there as well. in the early merge, she was in the know every vote. So like she is someone that has played overall a really good game. I think all three of those women have a case, right? They have an argument to be made. And so it's a matter of do they have a chance to vote Chris off or not? And do they realize that he actually is the favorite, not them?
Hmm.
Those are the two questions looking forward. I think the only other thing we need to talk about, though, is we haven't really talked about poor Cameron much. And I feel bad because I know Cameron probably will watch this. And it just, like I said last episode at the end, very end there, really what I think happened to him is he just ran out of room. It was
Hmm.
like, he got a little complacent in the alliance that was working for him because he had been so like, this is my perception. I actually haven't done his interview yet. I'm going to do it after he sees this episode. We're gonna get it done. But my perception would be early game, he was like a ship in the ocean in the middle of a storm. Just like up and down, left and right. I'm gonna get voted. He almost got voted off the first episode. He was one vote from getting voted off. Just like chaos happening here and there. He wanted to vote Chris off. Mason's like, no, let's go with Seth. And then there's the swap tribe. And in the swap tribe, him and Eli are butting heads on what they want to do. And it's just like, it's unsettled, unsettled, unsettled. And then finally, he gets a little bit of a groove and they vote Chris off when it's him and like Drew and Eli and this group of guys with like I think Sonya worked with them on just voting Chris
Yes.
off at least, but like that was a pretty big majority move and I think he thought okay I have a group here and then pretty much immediately that group falls apart. Eli
Yep.
and Drew are voted off really quickly and now again he is like again just lost and he finds a home here with these Sheway people with Sonya, Chris, and Moretta. So the four of them have, to this point, right before Sonny got voted off, they ran the table. It was a stretch of Siakam players getting voted off with Eli, Drew, and Annie. And I may have missed somebody in there, but I'm pretty sure it's like those were three of like of like four maybe in a row. That may not be exactly three back to back to back, but it was yes, Annie, Drew, Eli. Yeah, it was back to back to back. So it was Eli, then it was Drew, then it was Annie. So those four Sheways orchestrated three Siakams out the door week to week to week. And so he's like, okay, I'm doing good now. I'm in an alliance. I have a group of four Shiba people that want to work with me. And then Sonny goes home. And he's like, oh crap. Like
Yeah.
now what? I clearly am not in the know. The only person that didn't vote for Sonya was me and Sonya. So now I'm the one person that voted wrong out of five. That just is tough. And then you lose
Yeah.
the challenge. And it's like, okay, now what can you do? You know that Chris has immunity. You know that Leah has an idol. And then you only have two other people to work with. And you'd have to vote one of the two of them out because you can't vote off Chris or Leah. So then you have only really a couple of options of who to work with. And it's just like he a little unfortunate that Leah held on to the idol. A little unfortunate that Moretta held on to the Steeler vote this long. And I
Mm.
think this is probably a case that maybe next season we pull it back a little bit and just do just idols. I don't know. Just keep it a little more simple. I'm not sure that it would have changed the outcome. I don't think it would have changed the outcome in this episode, but just to, like let the players make choices more and have more freedom and at least feel like they have more freedom. Whereas here, Cameron was like, I can't do anything. Yay. And part of that is on him.
Yeah.
But probably, honestly, the most of it was on him because he had options and opportunities before to change things up and to go with different groups of people. It would have had to have happened several episodes ago. Like maybe even we've talked about it like five times, but maybe back to the Neil vote.
Yeah, that was the big one there with him and Eli and all that stuff. But let me just say this about Cameron because I probably felt like when I looked at this group of players heading into it, I think he was the one that shocked me the most how far he got, right?
Yes, he
And I think that
overexceeded
should be a compliment
expectations.
because I mean I don't really
Yes.
know Cameron that well outside of this game. Like I know who he is. I've had conversations with him, but it's not like I really know him as a person. But very quiet guy, and I know he's not the most athletic type of person. Like that's just not his MO, but he's a smart player and he
Yeah.
figured out how to make things work socially for the most part. Like to make it all the way to the final five is massive. And
Huge.
so
Yeah.
I just honestly never envisioned that when I saw him playing. Like I just didn't think how is he gonna just be able to like to slide in here? I thought he would be an early boot just because he is quiet and he might not hit the social game early on, but I thought he was able to kind of be a chameleon a little bit and just kind of blend in and figure things out. And he made some good moves and he made some strong decisions of trying to build alliances in the game. He just was a little bit slow, and I think that's part of it is you're learning on the fly. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's just to me, I would guess I hate to say it like this, but I was really proud of him. I was like, man, I'm really proud of this guy. Like he really has stepped up and taken his game to another level that I didn't
Mhm.
necessarily think was there. So I'll say this, like kudos to him. Like any of the four that are in the final four, like I literally could see any of them winning it. Like that's just how I felt coming into this before we started the game. But like the fact
Yeah.
that he made it this far, I mean, he's one immunity challenge went away from going to final four if he wins this one somehow. So it's like he put himself in a great spot.
Yeah.
Didn't get all the way to the end, but I mean, still, I mean, you have to applaud the effort.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was nervous for him going into the day. I was nervous for him being an early boot. He was 1 vote away, like I said, from being the first boot. And to be that close to being voted off first and make it to Final Five is really impressive. Especially when you then have to transition from being like scared for your life. And it's kind of like what Ben Brooks did, when he
Yeah.
was almost voted off super early too. And the two of them were good friends, so it's kind of ironic they ended up kind of playing somewhat similar games. Not exactly, but like in terms of that, like almost dead to making it really far kind of story. And yeah, I think that like Cameron's someone I'd be very, very interested in seeing how he plays a second time. I think
Hmm.
there's a lot he can learn from watching this season. Um, and it's as simple as like last episode, right? We talked about it a little bit, but Sonya is told to vote Leah, and Cameron is told to vote for Adrian, and they both do that from Chris. I'm not sure why they didn't talk
Yeah.
about who they're. 'Cause I feel like it just would have taken one. They must have They must have not talked, like right? Because how could you have? If because they worked together multiple rounds and even recent rounds, it wasn't like they hadn't worked together, right? So you'd have to have not talked. Because if they had talked and Cameron's like, "Hey, are you voting for Adrian?" and sometimes like, "No, I'm voting for Leah." Chris told me to vote for Leah. Then they're like, "Oh, Chris told me how to vote for Adrian." Then they have two choices. One, they go to Chris together and say, "Hey, which one is it?" Or they're like, "Oh, Chris is lying to us.
Hmm.
We need to go talk to Adrian or Leah or somebody and say,
Moretta.
hey, Moretta." I mean, you can even go to Adrian and say, "Hey, Chris is trying to vote you off," and spin it because like you wouldn't even be lying,
Yeah.
right? Right? Cameron can say, Chris told us to vote you off." Right after you could just make up a little white lie of like, yeah, after he told you, Leah, when Sonya was there next to you, when you walked away, he told Sonya that's a lie. It was Adrian.
Yeah.
And like maybe if Adrian buys it, now all of a sudden you got 3 votes and it's 3-3 and you can do something maybe.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just a matter of like again, it's late in the day, it's been a full day of this. These are people that aren't super experienced with this kind of strategy in terms of this gameplay because they haven't played before and they haven't watched a bunch of it. And so for Cameron to get this far and to do this well, would also say is something he should be proud of it, right? He
Yeah.
should be happy because he wanted to do well. He really cared about doing well. That's part of why I was so nervous. I wouldn't have been worried for him, not because I didn't think he was going to get voted off early, but because if I didn't think he cared, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. He might get voted off early, but if he doesn't care, then who cares? But I knew he cared, so I
Yeah.
was like, man, I'm worried for him. So I didn't want to
Yeah.
see him go home early because he cared. Like, and when somebody that I can tell when someone really wants to play, and I'm giving them a shot at playing, it isn't like I'm gonna be disappointed in them or anything like that. It's just like I want to see them get what they want out of the
Mm.
experience. And most people that I play that can play with me, they want to do well, they want to win, but it's kind of like, yeah, that'd be nice. But like Cameron really wanted to do well, like really cared.
Yeah.
And a few other people did too, but like he was one that really stood out to me as someone that like was really invested, and so I just wanted to see him do well. So he did really well overall. I'm not trying to. My statements earlier about what he could have done at this point is like he kind of just waited till it's too late. It's more just like, hey Cameron, here's your feedback of what to do next time.
Yeah, I mean, we've critiqued everybody's game, right? For the most
Yeah,
part. So it's
sure.
not just a personal thing against Cameron. It's like, hey,
This is what
only one person's
went
gonna
wrong.
win,
Yeah,
right? Only
yeah,
one person's gonna win, and we'll basically critique everybody else for not doing enough to get there. So
yeah,
that's kind of our job, I guess, to kind of recap these shows and talk about it. But it's you brought up some great points about Cameron and how he did and how he cared so much, and I think that he would be a really fun player to see play this game again. I think that he understands enough now that he could really learn from his
yeah,
first season, his initial season. So, yeah, I would just say, Cameron, you did a great job, and David was 100% right. You should be proud of yourself. I mean,
yeah.
that was really fun to watch. I really enjoyed watching your
It was good to
trajectory,
watch.
and I really loved how like the relationship with Chris and you developed over time. Like you guys
Yeah,
were like, he kept writing your name down. You think it's Sonya at first, you're not sure what's going on, and then all of a sudden, Chris is giving you an out by throwing a challenge for you to win. So I mean, it's just like, hey, you
and
won an individual immunity, so you can walk home and say, look at this, mom, I got a necklace.
yeah, I didn't show the vote. You see the vote obviously in the credits at the end, but Chris said, "Man, this is full circle," and he votes for you, right? And it was like early in the game, he's voting for Cameron because he's like, I don't really have a connection to him in terms of like we don't have an alliance or anything like that, and I don't think he's going to be great at the challenges, so I'm going to vote for him. So he just voted for Cameron multiple times, and then he stopped voting for Cameron because he realized he's an asset to me. He's an alliance member, like we're working together. Uh, and then at the end of the game, he's voting for him because he's a threat, right? Because he's the only
Mhm.
person that's not in the alliance. So he's like, okay, you're the only person that's not in the alliance with me, not in this best class alliance. So it's less of a vote because he's worried about his asset like level to the team, and now it's more of like a we have to get you out because you're not a part of the alliance, which is a
Yeah.
ton of respect, right? So
Hmm.
that's a pretty cool storyline, little arc there for over the course of the season. But other than that, man, we are ready for the finale.
Let's
Final
go.
four, best class. They did it. I mean, it's the first named alliance in Survivor Indianapolis history. I'm pretty sure. If there was another one, no one told me about it. Uh, and they made it from the returning players challenge all the way here. So it was like, was it 9 or was it 8?
I think it was 8. It was
Oh,
final 6. We
it
brought
was
2 more
6.
in.
It was 6 to 8. So they made it from 8 to 4. Made it through 4 rounds unscathed.
Four
And here they
Cheese
are.
Pizza Alliance.
There we go.
That's a little joke from Survivor 47 if you don't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
anything
yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But
yeah. I mean,
best class is a
I'm,
little bit cooler of a name than Four Cheese Pizza.
it's a little stronger, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Well, Sunday finale. Look forward to it. Check it out on YouTube. Let us know. Predict who in the best class is going to win this game. Comment down below. Give us your predictions. Like and subscribe while you're here for more Survivor Indianapolis Season 5 coverage. We're going to have postseason interviews with over half the cast coming after the finale. Look forward to that too. All right.
See y'all.